Shaleen title really amplifies what is one of black people's Achilles heels. She's really good with the rhetoric. She's really good pushing, a pro-black message, a pro-positive for black people message. But she doesn't deliver. So it looks like she's incompetent at best. It's one of those things that anybody who says they're going to do something for black people or the black community, they really have a past because nobody has ever been able to do anything for the black community. So it's like, hey, hey, I'm gonna do something for the black community. Hey, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. Yeah, yeah, black community, black community. And then they never really produce anything, but the black community doesn't really hold it against them because nobody has ever really been successful at saving the black folks' problem. And ultimately our problem is with white supremacy. So that's kind of what I just took it as. I at first me meeting Shaleen and then seeing, being in the program and seeing a lack of result, it's just kind of taken as incompetence, possibly. So when we had the forum, I spoke at the forum, and hey, me being a victim of mass incarceration, you guys don't know what we need. You don't know what we feeling. You don't know what's going on the ground. I spoke up. I actually wrote a piece. I wrote a book, centered around the questions that they were going to have because they told us it was going to be a short amount of time. And I was like, well, damn, I had a laundry list of questions. So it ended up turning into a book. I called it, the name of the book is Massachusetts Jumping Jim Crow for Cannabis. Massachusetts Jumping Jim Crow for Cannabis. I wrote that in response to the forum. Go check it out. It's like $6 book on Amazon. But anyway, so I made my cry, and Shaleen title, she's the red woman up there. Everybody else is white. And she sits on the social justice chair. So even if she didn't sit on the social justice chair, I probably would have still looked to Shaleen title, her being the only colored person up there, minority up there. So, but she sits in the social justice chair. And so I made my cry, I made my plea to the social justice chair and asked for a seat at the table to speak on behalf of the victims of marijuana mass incarceration, to get us up there and talk. Anyway, long story to the short, I was ignored. We created a group, social equity people at the time, economic empowerment people at the time was told that we needed to create groups. We needed to lobby. We needed to do these things. So we created a group and we tried to petition and stuff like that. And, we got nothing. We heard nothing from the social justice chair. So it was just up to us and our wherewithal to start, investigating and looking at our own program and trying to figure out if we could fix it ourselves. So we're looking at our program and we're doing the homework on our program, and we're seeing that Shaleen wrote the legislation, and so did Forefront's Chris Crane, and we're seeing that they made it so that these multi-state operators could come into Massachusetts. If they went medical. At the time, there was only about 10 RMDs operational. So for somebody who said they was a proponent for social equity, they pretty much stacked the odds against us. Here's another thing. They gave us 2 weeks to get our priority status. They gave these RMDs, these out-of-state RMDs who Shaleen is connected with. She's a minority owner at Forefront Ventures, which is a facilitator for multi-state operators. And collectively, these individuals wrote our legislation, and they wrote it in favor of these multi-state operators. This is the biggest foul right there. That right there is corporate espionage. When you're taking part in some policies or in something subversive to benefit your company, you're taking you're doing something on the front end that looks cool and looks legal and looks just and looks right, but it's to give your company an unfair advantage on the market. That alone is corporate espionage, but in a demonstrative manner that it happened. Like I told you, it was only 10 medical companies. It went to like 100 plus medical companies flooded the market because of that one move that Shaleen made and Chris Crane made in writing our legislation. And then there was another move they tried to make, which they tried to give these guys priority status. And, luckily enough, people in our legislative body had enough sense to reject that. But what Shaleen did, she went and got appointed to the CCC, the Cannabis Control Commission. The treasurer appointed her to the Cannabis Control Commission. And what she did was she granted these multi-state operators priority status, which was illegal. They didn't. There's nowhere in the legislation that said these multi-state operators who not from Massachusetts, who never paid taxes in Massachusetts, there's nothing that says these guys were supposed to get priority status. So through her control over the CCC and what was going on the CCC, she was able to get regulatory capture in favor of her corporation. Again, that's economic espionage, that's industrial espionage, and that's corporate espionage. So she was able to, get the legislation to work in favor of her clients. Then she was able to provide regulatory capture for her clients. Then she was able to break the law somehow and get the rest of the commission to go along with this imagined priority status that her clients were supposed to have. So, and then you have Shaleen Title also connected to another big dog. Vicente Sederberg is a multi-state operator facilitator also. They specialize in working with the local state municipalities to get these big companies, these multi-state operators in these states. So these guys, and Shaleen Title was the big dog. She was doing something for them. For Vicente Sederberg, she was working for them in some capacity. She was actually like a big dog for them. I forget what her specific title was, but she worked with Vicente Sederberg, and Vicente Sederberg was online bragging about having 50 HCAs in 2018. So Vicente Sederberg had 50 HCAs, host community agreements, in 2018. I wonder how much they got now in 2020. But in 2018, they had 50 HCAs off the rip, off the gate. You understand me? There was another big company too that had a whole bunch of ACAs. But this is a multi-state operator facilitator with 50 ACAs. They had so the end result is 300 plus licenses, given out. How many actually went to Massachusetts residents? A small number, if any. The RMDs got in, and the multi-state operators, out of 300 licenses, the multi-state operators, these were the bulk of these guys. It was at least 100 licenses went to multi-state operators. If not more, over 200 licenses went to multi-state operators. I'm guessing, because it was only 10 RMDs, and the multi-state operators got all the licenses. Minorities represented 2.4% of the licenses given out under Shaleen Title social equity. So this is what I'm saying. Black folks fell for the rhetoric on the front end, but she never delivered economic empowerment to us. She never delivered social equity to us. For the last 2.5-3 years, 2.4% minority licenses participation. That's what minorities represent in license and participation. Meanwhile, the multi-state operators took over the market, and the RMDs she pretty much got these multi-state operators in our market to give her a power holding against these RMDs who they didn't have a power holding with. So one of the most disgusting things about Shaleen Title to me is how black folks thinks that she loves us. We think Shaleen Title loved black folks, but she really just hit us with the okie doke, and that's kind of the worst. When you got the worst type of white supremacists are the ones that be smiling up in your face, acting like they love you, acting like they love your people, but they don't really give a damn about you. Don't really give a damn about your people, don't really give a damn about you. They just concerned with their own interests. So she fed all of us that bullshit of social equity and economic empowerment so she could facilitate regulatory capture for her clients, for her corporations. And I bet you after this, I bet anything she links back up with Vicente and Sederberg. I bet you anything she links back up with Vicente and Sederberg. All of the relationships she's built and the relationships she's built for herself in Massachusetts. They've done this in several states already. Vicente Sederberg, Forefront, they brag about have been doing this in several states. Corporate espionage, economic espionage, and it's okay to do it because it's cannabis. It's okay. It's okay. It's not regulated. It's cannabis. So while they regulate us heavily, and and by the way, the arrest rate has increased. for black and brown folks in Massachusetts. We are still being disproportionately arrested. We're still 4 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana. So here it is. The laws were never taken off the books. They're still mass incarcerating us for marijuana. And, as soon as they legalize it, we find out who the real criminals are. We find out who the biggest crooks are. Because look how they treat the opportunity. Espionage, where else? What other industry is this accepted in America? Economic espionage. You understand? Corporate espionage. What other industry is this accepted in America? It's not. It's not. We have, our citizens have, so what happened, what Shaleen did was she lifted up an entire revenue stream. This is what economic espionage does. This is what corporate espionage is. They lift up an entire revenue stream that was meant for that town. In this instance, this was an entire state's revenue stream. After legalization of marijuana, people have to realize marijuana is $1 billion industry, number one, number two cash crop by United Nations standards, right up there with coffee. So we kind of, Americans, we're legalizing it, and in the states, these vulnerable states, they might not know, but these other people who have been legalized in other states, they know about the $1 billion economic boom that comes to that state. They know about the 100 million economic boom that comes to that state. So they come in on the state and they come in to get on the legislation. As you get legalization, the citizens just want legalization. The citizens aren't necessarily thinking about the economics behind it. So this economic boom that was meant for the citizens in that state that have been paying the taxes in that state and getting arrested in that state, like myself, this is how we got the economic empowerment and the social equity. We had to demonstrate some disproportionate enfranchisement due to the marijuana drug war, or you, as economic empowerment, you had to demonstrate some type of leadership in business. These were business owners, business people, so in disproportionate areas. So they lifted an entire economic and corporate and industrial espionage. It's damaging to an entire community. It lifts a whole economic resource that was meant for that community to use and boom and bam and flourish with and live their best life with their family, like where they've been at in Massachusetts, paying their taxes or wherever state you at. But here I'm talking about specifically, she facilitated stealing. She facilitated stealing an entire market from people who didn't know no better, who didn't know nothing. And she gave it to these folks who did know, these sharks. And Forefront and Vicente Sederberg facilitated these sharks to come in and take over our market. They made it nice and easy for them. I told you, Vicente Sederberg, they went out and grabbed 50 HCAs before Massachusetts. We still trying to figure out how to handle an ACA in 2020. Massachusetts residents. We still trying to figure out how to handle a host community agreement. And Vicente Sederberg went out there and had 50 of them in 2018. And so Vicente Sederberg and Forefront, they take equity shares in these companies that they facilitate in the market. Vicente Sederberg, they also represent cannabis companies, so they don't take equity shares in everybody who they're dealing with, but they get paid. They're getting paid. And for some clients, they also cannabis lawyers. So it's just a demonstrative game out here. And right now we need some federal involvement to step in and save us from these monsters. We need some people maybe to go to jail to set an example. You lifted a whole entire economic resource. You stole that from a community of people who paid their taxes in Massachusetts, who paid their dues in Massachusetts. I had a secret indictment for marijuana in 2016 in Massachusetts. Do you understand me? The Massachusetts residents and citizens, we paid our dues. How dare anybody come out here and think that we don't deserve to benefit off of it? And, especially people in our government body who's supposed to be protecting our best interests. What she did, what Shaleen Tyler did was horrible, demonstrative. You understand me? Horrible, disgusting. It was disgusting. Black people, black, brown people, we counted on her just to try to deliver us some social justice. And she running around stealing our whole entire economic resource right under our noses. So that's That's what happened with Shaleen Title, and Forefront and Vicente Sederberg. That was the economic, the Massachusetts cannabis heist, the economic espionage, corporate espionage.